Okay fellas, welcome back to another CAD with Chris. For those of you missed out, we're just going to run through a quick drawing of a nameplate I've done with the other guys. So what I'm going to need you to do is just start up your AutoCAD program. Just make sure it's the English version. And then one thing you might also want to reference is just our drawing that we have for the potbelly. Alright, so there's not a lot of information on, well, there's not a lot of details around the nameplate, but well, I've kind of kept it a little bit loose just in case we have, you know, a few longer names we need to put in here. But one thing we'll start with is the hole center. There's 246, so that's kind of going to be a constraint for us when we make this up. Other than that, I'll just feed you the details as we go along, so just pay attention. But start a new drawing, whether you do that through the drop down or the fly out box here, or just click the plus icon as AutoCAD starts up. And now, as long as we're drawing in the positive of the X and the Y axis, it doesn't really matter where we start. If you want to start on 0, 0, you can. I'm just going to start in the middle of the screen here. I'm going to start by just selecting a rectangle. So that does make up the main shape of our nameplate. All right, so we'll start there, and then we'll add on or take away from it. So I'll just click. Now our hole centers were 246, so that's going to be the long dimension there, the number that's highlighted at the moment. So just on your number pad, type in 246, and then hit tab. That'll move us over to the Y, and then what we're going to do is make that one about 70 high. Alright, so just remember, if you really zoomed out and you have lost what you've just drawn, you can either do a fast double click on the scroll mouse and that'll zoom extents, or you can even type Z, enter, A, enter. I've got a dot over here somewhere, and that will zoom into the area you've been working on. Okay, so there's our rectangle there, 70 by 246. If I want to check that, I can use the measure tool up here and just hover over my box just to make sure it's right. Well, once you've done that, what I'll get you to do is put some center lines in just using the line tool. So select line and hover over your vertical line here, and just see how when I'm closer to the end I get a green rectangle. As I come towards the middle, it changes to a green triangle. Alright, that's just telling me that my snaps are active. Now if you're not getting that green triangle, it might be because your snap for that particular type is not active. So just remember, your snap options are down on the bottom right hand corner. You can turn them on and off, and you can also turn specific ones on and off that you need as you draw. So the ones that we're after are midpoint. Mine's selected, make sure yours is, and that just guarantees that we're selecting the center of the line. So select the line tool, put in a horizontal line, make sure you snap onto the center there, hit escape, and basically draw in a window. Alright, that's just going to help us locate our text later on, so they'll stay there for a little while. The next thing I want you guys to do is select the circle tool, and we're going to use center radius. Alright, so first step is select the center. Second step is to specify the radius. So we're going to put a circle here and a circle there. So just click, drag that out. Now the radius for that is going to be 10 mil, so it's a 20 mil hole. Alright, and I'm going to put one on the other side as well. So I select center, pick my radius, type in 10, hit enter to execute the command. After that, I'm going to trim this up a little bit, and we're going to add a few chamfers and radiuses to the outside profiles to sort of pretty it up a little bit. Alright, so that's our trim tool. In the modify tab up on the ribbon there, I take the inside of the circle out. I've clicked and I've kept my finger on the mouse. That allows me to draw a free-form sort of shape. If I just click and let go, I am locked into just straight lines, which is okay too. Just depends how you want to use the tool. Once you've trimmed that up, alright, we need to connect it all. Otherwise our fillet tool doesn't really work. So if I want to put a fillet in, basically what I want to do is put a small fillet in here. When you think about how we're going to process this, alright, it's going to get cut out on the plasma. That is a reasonably sharp corner that the plasma is going to need to navigate. It probably won't do a very good job of it. So it's a good idea if you have sort of corners that are nearly going internal to put a radius on them, just to help smooth out the movement of the plasma when it cuts. So if I go select my fillet tool, and if I just, for example, do one at the moment, if I just select R, because that's how we're going to designate it, a radius of 3 mil, enter, we're going to radius this circle to that. Now see how it won't do it. Alright, that's because at the moment this object and that object, see how I can select them all individually? They're not combined. We need to tell AutoCAD that these are all one entity, and we do that by selecting on our modify tab. There's an option here on the drop down flyout called join. Alright, so if we select join and then we select everything that we want to connect, which is all our outside profiles, and then hit enter once you've selected everything to execute the command. You don't see anything happen, but if I hover over that again now, you'll see it only takes one click and it is recognizing it all as one part. Alright, so then we can go back to our fillet tool. Now we have a few fillets to do. We've got 4 fillets to do. Now if I go about it the way that I did previously, just to show you, I have to keep selecting that fillet tool and I have to keep entering the radius in which I want to fillet at. But like I said, when you guys use this and you are, say, doing something on your own, AutoCAD's always going to ask you for prompts. So right now it's asking me to select my first object. That's hovering around my cursor. Down here on the command line, you have options on how to navigate the way this tool works, I guess. Alright, so we got options for whether we're going to do a radius or a sort of a free-form fillet. But there's an option here called multiple. So if I hit, see how the M is, or out of all of these options, they have a highlighted blue line, or blue letter, sorry. That's sort of the hotkey for it. So if I hit M for multiple, and then hit enter, oop, I have to call you back, Steve. So if I'm not sure if that worked, I'll just start it again. So I'll go, select my fillet tool, hit M for multiple, because I'm going to do a few fillets in one hit, okay? And then the way I'm going to designate those fillets is with a radius. So I can either click on it, or while I'm over here, I can just hit R for radius, enter. Now it remembers my last input, even though it didn't really do anything, but I want a 3 mil radius. So I'm going to leave it at that, hit enter. Now if I select my semicircle and my vertical line, you can see it's put a little radius in there. So semicircle, vertical line, you just go around and do those 4 fillets. Alright, once you've done them all, you just hit escape to cancel the command. Next thing we're going to do is just put a few chamfers around the corners, and it works the same way as a fillet, although it's in the modify tab. It's part of the sort of filleting command, except it's a second option, so you just have to hit the flyout menu and change it to a chamfer. Alright, and just remember too, if you hang around these options long enough, it does give you more detail on how they work and the steps that you have to do, whether it's a 2-part command, 3-part command, how to designate it. So if I select chamfer, again I'm going to hit M for multiple, because we're going to put a chamfer all the way around this. So M, for multiple. Now, the way we're going to designate this is just by a distance. All right, I could either do a distance or I could select the angle. All right, I might have, 45 degrees, I might have 30 degrees, it could be 20 degrees, 25 degrees, just depends what you're doing. But we're just going to go, it's a 45 degree, we're just going to go 10 by 10. All right, so I'm going to select D for distance, and then 10, enter. So that's one leg of the chamfer, and then you have to put in the second leg. So if you have, a different angle, not quite a 45, you can select two different lengths, and then it depends on which number you put in first as to which line you're going to select, which will then receive that longer or shorter chamfer length. So it's a 10 by 10, and then we can just go through and select each of our corners. Alright, once you've done that, that's the easy part. These are all tools that you guys have pretty much used before. I think the only tool that we've haven't used was that join command. So once you've done the chamfer, hit escape. Alright, our outside plate is basically done. We might just put our little holes in here. Alright, we're just going to make our life easier, which is the whole point of what the plasma's for. It is to just make things more accurate and make things a little bit quicker. So these are going to be through holes. Alright, now the plate that we're cutting this out of is 5mm. We're going to put a 6mm hole in here, give us a little bit of clearance. So that's a radius of 3mm, enter, or you can change that to a center and diameter. So I go circle, center, and 3, enter. Alright, when the plasma cuts that out, that's close to the same thickness as our plate. We are probably going to have to ream them out, that the whole quality that we'll get out of that, because it's so close to the diameter, is so close, the thickness of the plate probably won't be much chop. But those circumstances, in reality, we're probably better off doing a smaller hole, so it acts more as a ID, and then deliberately, in our planning process, when we go to make this, we are actually going to have to drill it out, because it will elongate the hole a little bit. Our plasma that we have here isn't good enough, or does not cut good enough detail down at that level. Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, mate. I'm going to have to call you back. Alright, so next step, this is the bit that takes a little bit of time. So now we're going to put our text in. Alright, so what I need you to do is we're going to navigate over to annotate. Alright, and then we're just going to set up our own text style. So you can see there's two different text styles sort of default here. There's an annotative one and a standard one, and we can add our own by just selecting manage text styles. So if you are doing something, or drafting something up, your company may have particular fonts and styles they want to use, say for dimensions, and then maybe something for notes. So there might be differences between there, so you could set up different text styles for those. We are, just as an exercise, going to make one up for our name. So I'm going to select a new style. I'm going to make a new style and just call it name. Whoop. And go OK. I'll make sure I'm on there, and then I'm going to edit my font style or font type. So that's over here. So at the moment it's just default Arial. Now you get a bit of a preview as to what it looks like. So if I click on that and then I use my keyboard arrows, the up and down arrow, to just navigate, obviously you could go from A to Z. So the idea is to customize this and make it your own, but again, we don't have all day, so you do have to be decisive. keep in mind we are cutting this out. So as I flick through here, there are writing styles which are better suited to being cut out by the plasma, and then there are certainly writing styles that are not. Alright, so something thin like that, basically what we're going to do is turn these into little lines, so they're going to be hollowed out sections, so the plasma still needs to be able to cut within these. So something a little bit thicker, even that would be alright. Just keep in mind, the more detail you put in, usually the closer it gets to running writing, the more work that you have to do. Okay, so you just find one, you just go through that you're happy with, okay? Alright, once you've found one that you're happy with, we're just going to put a default height in. I'm going to put in 35. We can change that later, okay? And then you go apply, and then you go close. So once you've done that, pick your font type, change your height to 35, apply, close. Alright, then we're going to do some text. So I'm going to select a multi-line. You get single line, multi-line. We're just going to go multi-line because helps us, well, it just makes it a little bit more easier to modify and move around. So you can see I get when I click multi-line, as long as I'm on my, see how it changes as I change my text style. Alright, I get a preview of the size and I get a preview of the type of lettering that's going on. So I'm just going to click over here and I'm going to click over there. Alright, and then I'm going to put my name in there. Just remember, I will be vetting these. All these you guys need to save as DXF and email them to me. I'll go through and sort of do a bit of proofing on them before we send them to our plasma to cut out. So what you write needs to be sensible. Okay, just keep that in mind. Alright, so here's my name. Alright, now there are a few little things that I am going to have to go and adjust. Alright, and I can do that by editing the text as it is now. Alright, so see how I'm over here at the moment, my crosshairs are sort of in the middle of the text, it's gone white, but as I go over to the edge, it turns blue. Alright, if I double click on that, you see that I get the option box appear for all the modifications I can do on my text. So if you aren't happy with the size or you do want to change the style of it, you can still do this here. Alright, or up in here. This is very similar to Word, I guess, or a Word document. Alright, so if I double click on my text, notice the gap between my A and my R and K and the E, they're all very tight. For this amount of detail, just from experience, I know that a 3mm gap is probably ideal. Right, anything smaller than that, it starts to leave like a fine haircut, overruns it a little bit, you may have things falling out. So I want to make sure that the gaps between my letters are just a little bit bigger, and I can adjust that with my formatting. Alright, so if I highlight my text, in the formatting option, if I fly out menu, you'll see I've got options here to change the slant or the oblique angle. This is the A to B, there is the width between my letters, and then I can change the width of my actual letters or spacing between my letters width. So this is the one I want to change. Alright, now don't type a number in, I just hit the up arrow, because then it just sort of keeps going. Alright, and it gives you a preview as you're making those changes. So I've increased the gap a little bit, so I've made it a little bit more plasma friendly. That's all we need to do. Oop, didn't mean to click out of that. While we're in here, the other thing we have to do is change the way the lettering's justified so we can place it in the center of our crosshairs on our nameplate. So I'll change my writing to center, the way it's spaced, and then you got an option here to change where the grip is on your wording. So if I click out, just to show you, here's a grip here. That's how I can locate and move my part around and snap it accurately onto something. Alright, so it's not quite where I want it. So what I'm going to do is double click back in here. I'm going to go to the justification, and you can see I can change it to the middle center. Alright, once I've done that, I can either click outside the box or go OK. Now when I click on it again, you'll see my grip has moved to the center. So the if you have a look at that, I'm using the crosshairs that I've put in, or the center lines that I've put in on my nameplate to centralize this now. Now most of the wording or most of the letter styles that you guys, or the font types that you guys are going to use, will work out alright. This one, for some reason, by eye, and again this is sort of what looks good to you, this gives me a starting point. It looks pretty center, but to me I feel like this needs to come up just a bit. So what I'm going to do is turn my ortho tracking, or ortho mode on, sorry. I'm going to select, just click on it so I can find that grip, and I'm just going to come up, no specific measurement. I might take my snaps off because it's going to default back to that. Take my snaps off, but if I stay on ortho mode, it'll allow me just to drag it up and still keep it sort of in position between the sides, but come up evenly, just to where I think looks a little bit more visually appealing, I guess. Alright, so once I've put it where I like, alright, and you're happy with the positioning of it, I can select those center lines and I can delete them. I might turn my snaps back on. Alright, so that's usually one of the longest parts of this, is just trying to pick some writing. Alright, we don't have unlimited amount of time, and just keep in the back of your mind that this does need to be cut out by the plasma, so be realistic in what you select. And you know, if you're unsure, just come and get me and we can go over it. Alright, so once you've selected your lettering, you're happy with your spacing, all that sort of stuff, we need to convert this into lines. Alright, so from the annotative tab, we're going to move across to Express Tools. Alright, and we got this thing here called Modify Text, and we can explode text, so it will convert or change your text into lines like what you drew as the outside border of this nameplate. Alright, so if I select Explode and then hit Enter, or sorry, select it and then hit Enter to execute the command, you'll see that it blows it all into lines. Now again, some people are going to have more work cut out for them than others. It just depends on the font type you pick, but either way, we're going to have to do a bit of tidying up. So see, it's got lines. Like, imagine my crosshair here is the plasma torch. It's got to run around all the inside here, so I want this to all be one whole inside part. Alright, so before we go and delete anything or start trimming anything, there's a few little things that we can do to make this a little bit easier. Alright, so from Express Tools, we're going to go back home. Alright, and then I'm going to explode my lines. Okay, so see how I click on that, that's all one unit. Alright, I want to break this apart, it will actually all be separate lines. So if I select everything and hit explode, when I click on that now, you'll see that that is a line and that is a line. Now I can just, easiest way, instead of doing trim, because trimming it, because it's coming back to say the tangent of a circle or something like that, you might end up with a little weird bit of extra lines or geometry going on in here, which the plasma won't like, so it's best to just completely delete lines. Right, but if I hit delete now, you'll see the line's still there. If I select it again and hit delete, now it's gone. So when we explode our text, we tend to get double the amount of lines on there that we want. So once you've exploded it, select everything again, and we'll go back up to that modify fly out, and we'll hit the little broom. Alright, we'll delete our duplicates. So hit the broom, go OK, and then if I click this line and I hit delete, I've only got to do it once. Get that one, hit delete, select them all, hit delete. I just know from doing this that all these were multiple lines. So one thing that we want to avoid, and you guys need to be very thorough with, is keeping your drawing tidy. All right, multiple lines, unclosed paths. If I don't pick it up, and then when we go to path it, the plasma doesn't pick it up, it's not going to do a very good job of cutting your job out. It's going to make a meal of the letters. So you just want to go over this thoroughly and make sure that you've gotten everything. All right, so once you've cleared it all out, my name's a pretty good example of letters that need modifying. All right, I've got a P, an A and an R. If we think about the way the plasma is going to cut this out, how much of it's actually going to remain, are you going to be able to see the letter or the intent? If I have a look at the P, no, that's just going to end up as a big hole. If I have a look at my A, that's going to end up as a big hole. So what we've got to do is draw tabs in here to make sure that stuff stays. All right, and like I said before, 3mm for what we're doing seems to be a pretty decent measurement and scale type for the size of the nameplate we're doing. So to do that, I'll select line, make sure my snaps are on. I'm just going to snap from this point to that point. Okay, hit escape, move up to use the offset tool. I'm going to offset it 3mm, so I've selected offset, I've hit 3, enter. I'm going to offset my line that I just put in. I'm going to make sure I offset it over this side. All right, and then I'm going to trim that back. All right, so now when I have a look at the way this is going to cut out, all right, it should stay. All right, all right. So that P is, going to be pretty recognisable. I need to go and do that for all my lettering. All right, you might have ones here. So say for an A, and this is entirely up to you now. I'm going to put lines where I think are going to look good. You can put them where you think are going to look good. Use your 3mm as your offset. Don't just eye it, because you'll be surprised. You might end up only doing, 0.2 of a mil or something like that, depending on the lettering you choose. So use a known measurement. That way you can get an idea of the scale of what you're doing. Now see with the A, how it hasn't quite, I've offset it, but it's offset, parallel to that, at the same length as that. It doesn't quite breach this A in the center. So I'm just going to grab that grip. I might just turn, so my polar tracking's on, I'm going to turn that off. My ortho mode's on. So if I just sort of come up that way, there are obviously better, sorry, undo that, I didn't mean to have that line selected. There are more accurate ways to do this, all right, but if you just try and hold it on that plane, near enough is good enough for this. All right, we're doing stenciling. It's, we're fall more in the realms of artwork than precision dimensions. So as long as it looks good is all we're after. Okay, so what you got to do is go through and do that to every single piece of lettering that you need. All right, whether you put all your lines in first and then go back and trim, I don't really care. You figure out the best way for you. Don't forget, L is your hotkey for your line. You can start experimenting with other hotkeys. TR is trim. All right, just doesn't matter too much, but it does make your life a little bit easier instead of going up there and clicking all the time, as you get a bit more proficient with this. So once you think you've done it all, zoom out, spend a second or two having a look at it. All right, and then what I'm going to need you to do is select everything again. Remember, you don't hold your key down, your mouse clicker down on the left, and then try and select, because you get this freeform shape. If you just click and let go, it will create a rectangle for you. So select everything, go back up to the modifier tab, hit the fly out option and select join. Okay, then this is just another double check. All right, so see how I'm clicking on my P and everything is one, clicking or hovering even. You don't even need to click on it. Hover over my A, everything's 1. Here we go. Here's 1. So E, something's happened there. R's fine. Something's happened with my E. Now this might be a case that there is a little line longer here, or I haven't quite trimmed something up, so sometimes it requires further investigation. I'm just going to select both of these on their own and hit join, and it's okay. If you do that and it still doesn't join, I can guarantee somewhere over here, somewhere around here, usually it's on circles or something like that, there'll be an extra line in there, so you got to zoom right in and figure out what is going on. But then once everything's connected, all joined up like mine, you are ready to send this off. All right, so before we started, best practice, we should have saved it. All right, so save it as name plate with your name at the end, so that way when I get it and I put it in my little repository of all the stuff that you guys send me, I know whose is whose. And then don't forget, when you save it in your OneDrive, because this is something I've already had a couple that I've had to go back, or they're going to have to go back, and make changes because their lettering, it did not work. Again, this was a bit of a trial and error. So make sure it's in your OneDrive, because if you don't have it, you'll be doing it all over again. And then once you've saved it, default file type is a DWG. Go in, click Save As. That's the floppy disk with the pencil. Save it as a 2018 DXF. That is the file you are going to email to me. Okay? And that about concludes your drawing lesson. Good job.